Lieutenant Jack Morgan's fingers tapped the edge of his desk, his eyes fixed on the photograph he kept there. It was a simple picture, taken years ago. Evelyn stood with her arm around Sophie, who couldn't have been older than 6 at the time, missing a tooth, but beaming with unbridled joy. Jack stood behind them, his hand resting protectively on Evelyn's shoulder. That photo used to mean something. Now, it felt like a relic of another life. The precinct's faint buzz filled the background. Phones rang, officers exchanged banter, and the smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. Jack leaned back, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It had been another long day. Endless reports, dead-end leads on a case involving Sebastian Cross, a local millionaire with his fingers in every illicit pie in the city. The phone on his desk rang, jarring him from his thoughts. He picked it up absent-mindedly. "Morgan, Dad, you need to come home. Now." Sophie's voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. Instantly, Jack's posture straightened, his instincts kicking in. "Sophie? What's going on?" he asked, his tone sharpening. "It's Mom," Sophie said, her voice breaking. She's with some men. Not just anyone, Dad. They're dangerous." Jack felt his blood turn cold. "Where are you?" "Outside the house," Sophie replied, her breath uneven. "I saw them go in. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to." "You did the right thing calling me," Jack interrupted, already standing and grabbing his badge and service weapon. "Stay put. Don't go inside. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Dad, hurry," she pleaded. Jack hung up, his mind racing. His worst suspicions, the ones he'd pushed aside for months, were now impossible to ignore. He strode through the precinct with purpose, nodding at a few colleagues who stepped aside at the intensity in his gaze. Reaching his car, he slid behind the wheel and floored the accelerator. The streets blurred as Jack sped home. Memories flooded his mind. Late nights when Evelyn claimed she was working late, hushed phone calls she dismissed as nothing important, and Sophie's lingering looks whenever Evelyn wasn't around. He'd chalked it up to paranoia, the kind that creeps in when work consumes your life. But now, the pieces were falling into place, and they painted an ugly picture. Jack arrived to find Sophie standing at the edge of the driveway. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, and she looked smaller than he'd ever seen her. She ran to the car as he pulled up, opening the door before he could step out. Sophie stood at the edge of the driveway, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, a futile attempt to ward off the chill of the night, or perhaps the fear gnawing at her. Jack's car screeched to a halt, his headlights flooding her with light as he jumped out. She rushed to him before he could say a word. "Inside," she said, pointing to the house. "They're still inside. Mom, she's with them." Jack placed his hands on her shoulders, grounding her. "Who?" "I've seen them before," Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. "One of them is that guy you're always talking about. The millionaire." Jack's stomach dropped. "Sebastian Cross?" She nodded quickly, her eyes wide. "Yeah, I heard them talking about deals, money, stuff that sounded bad." "Dad, it's serious?" Jack's jaw tightened. Cross wasn't just any criminal. He was a kingpin, a man who operated with impunity, protected by wealth and influence. And now he was inside Jack's home, entwined in the wreckage of his personal life. "Stay here," Jack said firmly. "Lock yourself in the car. Don't get out, no matter what." "But Dad..." No, his voice was sharp, brooking no argument. "I mean it, Sophie. I need to handle this. Just stay safe." She hesitated but nodded, climbing into the car and locking the doors. Jack turned toward the house, his mind already calculating the next steps. As he walked toward the front door, he pulled out his phone and dialed the precinct. "This is Lieutenant Morgan. I need immediate backup at my residence. Possible armed suspects, including Sebastian Cross. I'm going in." The dispatcher's voice crackled in his ear. "Understood, Lieutenant. Units are en route." Jack pocketed the phone and approached the door, his hand resting on the grip of his gun. The door swung open with a single, forceful kick, the sound reverberating through the house. Jack stepped in, his gun drawn, his eyes sweeping the living room. Evelyn sat on the couch, her face pale and stricken, flanked by 3 men. Among them was Sebastian Cross, who leaned back with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His smug grin faded as he registered the fury in Jack's eyes. Well, Lieutenant, Cross sneered, setting the glass down with deliberate nonchalance. Didn't know you'd be home so soon. Get on your knees. All of you, Jack barked, his voice hard as steel. The tattooed man on Cross's left moved slightly, as if to object, but stopped when Jack turned the gun toward him. Don't test me, Jack warned, his tone lethal. Slowly, the man complied, dropping to his knees. Cross stayed seated, his smirk returning as if testing how far he could push. Evelyn's voice broke through the tense silence. Jack, wait, I can explain. She stood, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Jack's gaze snapped to her, his voice venomous. Explain? Go ahead. Tell me how you've been sneaking around with him. How long, Evelyn? Her lips trembled. I didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't mean for it to happen? Jack's laugh was bitter, filled with disbelief. You brought Sebastian Cross into our home. Do you even understand who he is? What he's done? I didn't know at first, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. I was in over my head, Jack. I thought I could handle it. Jack shook his head, disgust flashing across his face. Handle it? You betrayed me. You betrayed Sophie. And for what? Before Evelyn could answer, Sophie stormed in, defying Jack's orders to stay outside. Her face was flushed with anger, her fists clenched tightly at her sides. You didn't mean it, she snapped, glaring at Evelyn. This isn't the first time, Mom. Don't pretend it is. Sophie, go back outside, Jack said sharply, his protective instincts flaring. No, Dad, she shot back, her voice trembling but resolute. I need to say this. She doesn't get to act like it's just some mistake. She's been lying for years. Evelyn reached towards Sophie, but the teenager recoiled. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered. I never wanted to hurt you. It's a little late for that, Sophie said, her voice cutting like a blade. Cross watched the scene unfold with amusement, leaning forward slightly. Touching, he said, clapping slowly. A real family drama. You should pitch it to a network, Jack. Shut up, Jack snapped, training the gun back on Cross. You think this is a joke? You think you can waltz into my house, tear apart my family, and get away with it? Cross raised his hands mockingly. Easy, Lieutenant. I'm just here for a friendly chat. Evelyn invited me. After all, isn't that right? Evelyn's eyes darted between Jack and Cross, her panic growing. Jack, please. He doesn't mean anything. I was stupid. It was just business. Business? Jack's voice was incredulous. You've been helping him run his scams, haven't you? Selling out your own family for money. It wasn't about the money, Evelyn cried. I thought I could make things better for us. For Sophie. For you. By working with him? Jack's voice rose, and he pointed the gun at Cross again. You think he's going to help you? He's a parasite, Evelyn. And you let him in? The tattooed man shifted again, and Jack noticed his gun swiveling toward him. Don't even think about it, Jack warned. I will drop you where you stand. The sound of sirens in the distance cut through the tension, growing louder with each passing second. Cross's smirk faltered for the first time, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Looks like your time is up, Cross, Jack said, his voice cold. Back up, Cross muttered, shaking his head. You really are a by-the-book kind of guy, aren't you, Morgan? When it comes to taking down scum like you, absolutely, Jack retorted. The flashing lights of police cars illuminated the living room as officers spilled into the house, their weapons drawn. Hands up, one officer barked. Cross sighed dramatically and raised his hands, the smugness returning to his expression. All right. No need for all the fanfare. The officers moved quickly, cuffing Cross and his men. Evelyn watched in silence, tears streaming down her face as she was pulled aside for questioning. Jack handed his weapon to one of the officers and turned to Sophie, who stood frozen near the door. Come on, he said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. Let's get out of here. She nodded, her expression hardening as she cast one last look at her mother. She's not coming with us, is she? Sophie asked quietly. Jack hesitated, his heart heavy. No, she's not. They walked out together, leaving the chaos behind as the officer secured the scene. For the first time that night, Jack felt a glimmer of clarity. This was only the beginning, but he would face it head-on, for Sophie and for himself. The scene outside the house was a chaotic blur of flashing lights and murmured voices as officers processed the arrests. Jack stood near his car, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Sophie lingered by his side, her jaw tight with simmering anger. Sebastian Cross, handcuffed and surrounded by officers, still managed a smirk as he was led to a squad car. "Don't think this is over, Morgan," he called out, his voice dripping with venomous charm. "You've just made it personal." Jack didn't respond, his focus shifting to Evelyn, who was standing off to the side, her hands clasped tightly as she begged an officer for a moment with her husband. Her tear-streaked face and trembling frame did little to stir Jack's resolve. "Lieutenant," the officer said, approaching Jack cautiously. "She wants to talk to you. Do you want us to hold her here, or?" Jack nodded curtly. "I'll handle it." He turned to Sophie, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Wait in the car, sweetheart." Sophie hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she glanced at Evelyn. "She doesn't deserve it," she muttered, but obeyed and climbed into the passenger seat. Jack approached Evelyn, his footsteps deliberate, his expression cold. "You have 2 minutes? Talk." Evelyn's voice cracked as she started. "Jack, I'm sorry. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I didn't mean for it to get this far. Please, you have to believe me. I didn't want to hurt you or Sophie." Jack's jaw tightened. "You didn't want to hurt us?" he repeated, his tone icy. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You brought a man like Cross into our lives. You've been lying for God knows how long. And you expect me to just forgive and forget." "It wasn't about him," Evelyn pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I was desperate, Jack. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter anymore. And Cross, he made me feel—" "Don't you dare say alive," Jack interrupted, his voice low and menacing. "You felt alive betraying your family? Selling us out to a man who's destroyed countless lives? Spare me your excuses." Evelyn dropped to her knees, sobbing openly. "Please, Jack, I made a mistake. Don't do this to Sophie. She needs her family. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." Jack looked down at her, his face devoid of sympathy. "You did this to Sophie. You did this to us. And there's no fixing it. Not anymore." Evelyn reached for his hand, but he stepped back, shaking his head. "Your choices have consequences, Evelyn, and it's time you face them." 2 officers approached to escort Evelyn to a squad car. She didn't resist, her sobs echoing in the night as she was led away. Jack stood motionless, watching as the car door closed behind her. He felt a pang of something, grief, maybe, or regret, but he shoved it aside, focusing on what mattered most now, Sophie. Back in the car, Sophie's silence was heavy. She stared out the window, her fingers gripping the edge of the seat. Jack slid into the driver's side and started the engine, the hum breaking the stillness between them. "She's gone, isn't she?" Sophie finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack nodded. "For now, yes. She'll have to answer for what she's done." "Good," Sophie said, her tone hard. She turned to face him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't care what happens to her. She doesn't care about us." Jack reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "That's not true, Sophie. She made terrible choices, but I believe she cared in her own way. It just wasn't enough." Sophie shook her head. She cared more about herself. "I hate her for that." Jack didn't respond immediately, letting her words hang in the air. Finally, he said, "Hating her won't fix anything. It won't heal what's broken. But we'll get through this. You and me." Sophie leaned back in her seat, her expression softening. "I believe you, Dad. I just don't know how we're supposed to move on from this." "One step at a time," Jack said, starting to drive. "We'll figure it out together." The ride home was quiet, the weight of the night's events settling over them. When they pulled into the driveway, the house felt different, emptier, colder. Jack glanced at Sophie, who hesitated before stepping out of the car. "Do you want me to stay with you tonight?" he asked. Sophie shook her head. "No, I'll be okay. I just need some time." Jack nodded, watching as she disappeared into the house. He lingered outside for a moment, staring up at the windows that once framed a picture of a happy family. Now, They were just glass panes, reflecting a fractured reality. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for Sophie's sake, he'd walk it, no matter how long it took. Months passed, but the night of Evelyn's betrayal lingered in Jack's mind like a wound that refused to heal. He threw himself into his work, focusing all his energy on dismantling Sebastian Cross's empire. Each arrest, each file unearthed, was another piece of the puzzle, and another step toward justice. Cross's web of corruption extended further than Jack had imagined, with ties to politicians, law enforcement, and major businesses. It was a behemoth, but Jack was relentless. Sitting at his desk late one evening, Jack flipped through a dossier on Cross's known associates. The precinct was nearly empty, save for the hum of computers and the occasional shuffle of papers. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. It was Josephine Hayes, his partner on the case. "Jack, you'll want to see this," Josephine said, her voice steady but urgent. "What is it?" Jack asked, already grabbing his jacket. One of Cross's top guys just flipped. "He's ready to talk." Within minutes, Jack was in the interrogation room. A wiry man named Carter sat across the table, his hands cuffed. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he avoided Jack's piercing gaze. "Start talking," Jack ordered, leaning forward. "What's Cross's next move?" Carter hesitated, his eyes darting to Josephine, who stood in the corner with her arms crossed. "He's got a stash house," Carter muttered. "Big one. Documents, cash, blackmail material. Everything you need to nail him." Jack's pulse quickened. "Where?" Carter gave an address, and Jack wasted no time organizing a raid. The operation went down 2 nights later. Jack and Josephine led a team of officers to the unassuming warehouse Carter had described. The air was tense as they approached, their weapons drawn. Jack signaled for the team to fan out, covering all exits. "On my count," he whispered into his radio. 3, 2, 1. The door burst open, and the team flooded inside. Shouts filled the air as suspects were subdued and evidence was secured. Jack's eyes scanned the room until they landed on a large safe in the corner. He approached it, motioning for the forensics team to crack it open. When the safe finally yielded, it revealed a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Ledgers detailing bribes, photographs of illicit deals, and a hard drive labeled insurance. Jack's heart raced as he realized they'd hit the jackpot. "Bag everything," he instructed. "This is what we've been waiting for." As the evidence was processed, Jack's attention turned to Evelyn. Her involvement in Cross's schemes had come to light during the investigation. While she wasn't a major player, her actions had facilitated some of Cross's crimes. The fallout was swift and merciless. Jack stood outside the courtroom on the day of her arraignment. Evelyn emerged, her once confident demeanor replaced by a hollow, broken expression. Reporters swarmed her, shouting questions as cameras flashed. She turned to Jack, her eyes pleading. "Jack," she said, her voice barely audible. "You've got to help me. Please." Jack's expression remained stone cold. "Help you? After everything you've done?" He shook his head. "You made your choices, Evelyn. Now you'll face the consequences." Tears streamed down her face as she was escorted away. Jack watched her go, feeling no satisfaction, only a grim sense of closure. Sophie, meanwhile, had thrown herself into her schoolwork and extracurricular activities, using them as an escape from the chaos. She'd grown distant from Evelyn, their once close bond now a strained and fragile thread. Jack did his best to be there for her, but the wounds Evelyn had inflicted ran deep. One evening, as Jack and Sophie sat on the couch watching a movie, she spoke up. "Dad, do you ever think things will go back to normals?" Jack sighed, considering his words carefully. "I don't think things will ever be the same, Sophie. But that doesn't mean we can't find a new kind of normal. We're stronger than this. We'll get through it." Sophie nodded, her expression pensive. "I'm glad we have Josephine," she said after a moment. "She's good for you." Jack glanced at her, surprised. "Josephine's been a great friend," he said cautiously. "She's more than that," Sophie said with a small smile. "I can tell. And it's okay, Dad. You deserve to be happy." Josephine Hayes had indeed become a significant presence in their lives. Her unwavering support during the investigation and her kindness towards Sophie had created a bond that went beyond mere friendship. Over time, Jack found himself drawn to her strength and compassion. One night, after a particularly long day at the precinct, Jack and Josephine found themselves alone in the office. They sat across from each other, the silence between them comfortable yet charged. "We did good today," Josephine said, breaking the silence. "Cross is finally running out of places to hide." Jack nodded. "Couldn't have done it without you." Josephine smiled, her eyes meeting his. "You know, Jack, you're allowed to lean on people. You don't have to carry everything on your own." Jack hesitated, then said, "It's hard to let go. After everything that's happened, it's hard to trust again." "Trust takes time," Josephine said softly. "But it's worth it." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the weight of the past seemed to lift. Jack realized that maybe, just maybe, he could let someone in again. Years had passed since the chaos that turned Jack's world upside down. The scars of betrayal still lingered, but life had taken a turn Jack never thought possible. He and Josephine stood on the porch of their new home, watching Sophie cross the stage in her cap and gown. The college graduation ceremony was held on a sunny afternoon, and the sound of applause filled the air as students accepted their diplomas. Jack's chest swelled with pride as Sophie's name was called. She strode across the stage with confidence, a bright smile on her face. He clapped loudly, whistling to make sure she knew just how proud he was. "She's come so far," Josephine said softly, standing beside him. "You both have." Jack glanced at her, a smile tugging at his lips. "I couldn't have done it without you." After the ceremony, Sophie ran up to them, her diploma in hand. She hugged Jack tightly. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." "You earned this, kiddo," Jack replied, ruffling her hair. "I'm just glad I could be here to see it." Josephine joined the hug, her arm around Sophie's shoulders. "Let's celebrate. How about dinner at that new Italian place you've been talking about?" "Sounds perfect," Sophie said, her eyes shining with excitement. As they sat around the table later that evening, laughter and conversation flowed freely. For the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of completeness. The wounds Evelyn had inflicted had healed over time, replaced by the love and trust he had found with Josephine and Sophie. Halfway through the meal, Sophie's expression grew serious. "Mom sent me another letter," she said, setting her fork down. Jack's smile faded. "What did it say?" "The same as always," Sophie replied. "She's sorry. She wants to see me. She's lonely." Josephine reached over and placed a comforting hand on Sophie's. "It's your choice, Sophie. You're old enough to decide what kind of relationship you want with her." Jack's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Josephine's right. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Sophie hesitated, then shook her head. "She's had years to make things right. I needed her, and she wasn't there. I don't think I can trust her again." Jack exhaled slowly, relief and sadness mingling in his expression. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Sophie. Whatever you do, don't let anyone make you feel guilty for putting yourself first." Meanwhile, Evelyn's life had unraveled completely. Ostracized by her former friends and shunned by society, she lived in a small apartment, alone with her regrets. The letters she sent to Jack and Sophie were her only connection to the family she had betrayed. Each time she sent one, she hoped for a response, but none ever came. Sebastian Cross, once a powerful and untouchable figure, had faced his reckoning as well. The evidence Jack and Josephine uncovered had led to multiple convictions, and Cross was now serving a lengthy prison sentence. His empire was dismantled, his wealth seized, and his name disgraced. Evelyn visited Cross once, hoping for some form of solace or partnership in their shared downfall. But the meeting had been brief and bitter. Cross, ever the narcissist, had no interest in her pleas for support. "You were just a pawn," he'd sneered through the glass of the visitation room. "Don't think we're in this together." Evelyn had left that day feeling more alone than ever, the weight of her decisions crushing her. Back at home, Jack and Josephine began settling into their new life. Their relationship had grown deeper over the years, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. They often spent quiet evenings on the porch, watching the sunset and talking about the future. One evening, as they sat together, Jack took Josephine's hand. "I never thought I'd be happy again," he admitted, his voice tinged with gratitude. Josephine squeezed his hand gently. "You deserve this, Jack. You've worked so hard to rebuild your life. And Sophie's thriving because of you." Jack smiled, leaning over to kiss her forehead. "Because of us. I couldn't have done it alone." The sound of Sophie's laughter drifted from inside the house, and Jack felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time in years, he wasn't haunted by the past. He had rebuilt his life from the ashes, finding love, trust, and a new sense of purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack knew that this was the start of a new chapter, one filled with hope, happiness, and the family he thought he'd lost. Evelyn and Cross were left to face the consequences of their betrayal, a fitting end to their deceit, while Jack moved forward, stronger than ever.